Have you ever wondered how paint, this vibrant substance that brings life to our walls, art, and surroundings, is made? This seemingly simple fluid holds a world of complexity. Paint, in its essence, is an amalgamation of color and texture that has the power to transform our everyday experiences. It's in the murals that adorn city streets, the masterpieces that hang in prestigious galleries, and the cozy living rooms where families gather. But how does paint come to be? How do we transform raw materials into the rainbow of hues available at the local hardware store? The answer lies in a fascinating process that combines science, art, and a dash of magic. Over the next few scenes, we'll walk you through this process from the initial gathering of ingredients to the final product that ends up in your paintbrush. Prepare to dive into the colorful world of paint manufacturing, a process simpler than you might imagine. At its core, paint is a blend of three basic components: pigments, binders, and solvents. Let's take a closer look at each element to understand its role in the composition of paint. Firstly, pigments. These are finely ground particles that give paint its color. Pigments can be derived from a variety of sources, including minerals, plants, and even synthetic materials. The choice of pigment not only determines the color of the paint, but also its opacity and light fastness. That is, how resistant it is to fading when exposed to light. On to the second component, binders. Binders, also known as resins, are sticky substances that hold the pigment in place once the paint dries. They're what gives paint its adhesive quality, allowing it to stick to various surfaces from canvas to walls. The binder also influences the finish of the paint, whether it's glossy, matte, or somewhere in between. Lastly, we have solvents. Solvents are liquids that make the paint spreadable. They thin the paint, making it easier to apply. The solvent evaporates as the paint dries, leaving behind the pigment and binder. So there you have it. The triad of components that make up paint: pigments for color, binders for adhesion and finish, and solvents for application. Now that we know the key ingredients, let's explore how they come together to create paint. The first step in making paint involves mixing the pigments. Now, the magic truly begins. The pigments, which are essentially the soul of the paint, need careful selection. These are the elements that give paint its color, its vibrance, its character. Once chosen, they're ground into a fine powder as fine as dust. This process ensures that the color distributes evenly when mixed with other ingredients. Imagine the pigment particles as tiny color capsules, each one holding a burst of color, ready to explode when disturbed. Now, this fine pigment powder is mixed with a little amount of oil. Why, you might ask? Well, the oil acts as the first binding agent, transforming the pigment powder into a thick, rich paste. This paste is the raw, vibrant essence of what will soon be a can of paint. It's the heart of the process, where color comes alive. With our pigment paste ready, we can move on to the next stage. The next step is to add the binder, which will hold our pigment in place once the paint dries. Now, the type of binder we select is crucial as it varies based on the type of paint we're making. In oil paints, for instance, we use linseed oil. Acrylic paints, on the other hand, require a polymer or acrylic resin. The binder's role is like the glue of the paint. It's what traps the pigments and gives the paint its adhesion, allowing it to stick to surfaces. Let's think of it as the egg in a cake recipe. It binds all the ingredients together to create a harmonious blend. It's the binder that ensures our beautiful pigments won't simply dust off the canvas or wall after drying. Once chosen, the binder is mixed thoroughly with the pigment paste we've already prepared. This process is similar to making a smoothie. You want to blend everything together until you achieve a consistent, homogeneous mixture. No lumps, no uneven spots, just a well-integrated concoction of binder and pigment. The stirring process is crucial. It's not about speed, but about ensuring each pigment particle is surrounded by the binder. It's a delicate dance between the pigment and the binder, one that results in a beautiful, colorful paste. We now have a mixture that closely resembles paint, but there's still an essential step to be taken. You see, creating paint is a fascinating process, and we're only scratching the surface, so let's press on to the next step. The final step in the paint-making process is to incorporate the solvent. Now, why is this solvent so crucial, you may wonder? Well, it's the ingredient that gives paint its spreadability, allowing it to glide smoothly across any surface. Imagine trying to spread cold butter on bread. Not very easy, is it? The same goes for paint without a solvent. It just wouldn't glide as nicely. But here's where the magic happens. By carefully adjusting the amount of solvent added, we can control the thickness of the paint. Add just a little and you'll have a thick, heavy-bodied paint. Pour in more, and you'll get a thinner, more fluid paint. This is where the art and science of paint making meet, where precision and creativity shake hands. It's a delicate balance, a dance of sorts between the ingredients, and just like that we have paint. But how is it fine-tuned to perfection? Once we have our basic paint, it's time for the finishing touches. Just like a chef adding a sprinkle of seasoning to a dish, the paint maker now fine-tunes the paint's consistency and color. You see, no two batches of paint are ever quite the same, and adjusting for these subtle differences is a true art form. First, the consistency. This is a delicate balance. Too thick and the paint won't spread evenly, too thin and it won't provide adequate coverage. Paint makers use a variety of tools, like viscometers, to measure the paint's viscosity and ensure it's just right. They may add more solvent to thin the paint, or more binder to thicken it, achieving a Goldilocks consistency. Not too thick, not too thin, but just right. Next up is color adjustment. Even a slight deviation in color can be noticeable, especially when you're matching an existing paint job. So, paint makers use their keen eyes and years of experience to tweak the color until it's perfect. They might add a dash more pigment, or perhaps a splash of white to lighten the shade. It's a meticulous process, a dance of precision and intuition. But we're not done yet. Additional additives might be introduced to enhance the paint's durability, drying time, and other characteristics. These could include defoamers to reduce bubbles, biocides to prevent mold, or UV inhibitors to protect the color from fading in the sun. Every stage of the paint-making process is a testament to the beautiful marriage of science and art. From the basic ingredients to the finishing touches, each step is executed with precision, care, and a dash of creativity. It's a process that transforms simple materials into a medium that brings color, life, and emotion to our world. And that, my friends, is the fascinating process of making paint, a simple yet intricate blend of science and art.